And the scene is set as Laird Brehon is driving away from the gated community after meeting Dr. Isaac Gustafsson. He, of course, has the body of the Black Rose killer in the trunk of his car. He picks up his cell phone, and he hits speed dial for the prince, driving towards Nobility Hill.
Yes.
Hello. Could I speak with Mr. Stanshope? Could you tell him, please, that Mr. Brehon is calling?
Oh, Mr. Brehon, one moment, please.
Thank you so very much.
Dun 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 ding dun ding dun ding ding dun ding. Mr. Brehon.
Sir, thank you for taking my call. I'm currently driving en route to your residence, though I figured I would ask you for directions if this is not the correct place to go. Currently in the trunk of my car is the body of one Black Rose killer. Torchwood.
I hope to God that this is a secure line.
It's one of Schmidt's phones.
Right. I'm unaware of who you are speaking of.
I'm unaware too. That's why I wanted to call you.
Then why does this interesting gentleman, I assume, has any business with me?
I just spoke with Dr. Isaac Gustafsson about the tragedy.
I see. Well, then, in that case, bring him to the casino.
All right.
Drive around, make sure no one sees you, go there. Understand?
Yes, sir.
Click.
Normally, Laird would have tried using some of the garbled speak from Darkstone's protocols, but honestly, he's just too fucking tired. He drives to the casino, spacing a little.
You go into the underground car park of the theatre complex, and the staff only. You drive in, and you see that John is there with his cell phone. As you pull up, if you roll a perception alertness roll, you might catch his conversation.
He has heightened senses too,
Mm-hmm.
so that make it difficulty -1.
Yep.
Okay.
5.
Hang on 1 second. And that's 3 successes if it's -1.
No, Jeffrey. If she wants to see that movie, then put it on. No, I understand. Look, I've got Alfred to move her things. I just need you to keep her busy for a while. Yes, bring her to Nobility Hill. Okay. Okay. Put her on the phone. Katie, sweetie. It's Papa. Yes. Yes, going on an exciting day. Yes, I know. Now, you have to be a good girl and do as Jeffrey says. I will be home soon. In your new room. Yes, exciting, isn't it? Don't eat Jeffrey. No, that's bad. Jeffrey is a friend. Okay. All right, I love you, sweetie.
Laird, of course, doesn't say anything as he walks from his car to meet with the prince. He bows his head deeply in respect.
What is
My
this about, Mr. Brayhorn?
The prince can see how tired Laird is, visibly, like he's exhausted. He looks like he hasn't slept in days almost. Laird says to Stanhope, "Well, about that little problem that you gave me to solve. I've been tugging away at various threads. Here's what I've got. In the trunk of that car is the Black Rose Killer without his feet or his hands. He's been staked, but we should be able to revive and interrogate him. I've also met with Dr. Isaac Gustafsson, whom, as far as I can tell, is under the influence of some sort of persuasive ability. He had a lot to say about Dr. Mogens and a Duncan Duncern."
Prince's brow raises at that. Anything pertinent?
I've got a lot of notes. I want to put it all together and email you a report from the experience I had with the doctor, if that's all right with you. I figure tonight we should see about maximizing our time, see what we can get out of this Black Rose Killer.
Right, this is the other question. Who on earth is the Black Rose Killer?
He's a escaped inmate from the asylum, a vampire. It's purportedly Malkavian, from what everybody's been claiming is going on over there. And in his kind life, he was a serial killer. I don't know too much about it, but there's a lot of stuff on public record we could probably look up while we're getting him revived.
I see. And you wish for this Mr. Killer to speak on his time at the asylum?
Well, I wish for us to know anything and everything we can know before we send anybody in there.
I see. Well, he is an illegal kindred in my city, so I suspect he will not be coming out. Is that correct?
He smiles at you and bows. Of course.
Well then. Please bring him. And try and be discreet about it.
Laird bows deeply. And he doesn't say a word. He hits the unlock on his car, walks back to his car, and he removes a duffel bag-sized object, even though it looks to you like tarps people would use if they're painting a house, tied with some rope. He throws the man over his shoulder. I don't have a pillow. I was going to use a pillow. he throws the man over his shoulder, and you know he can handle the weight. He walks slowly over to you. If you would lead the way, my prince.
John sets a pace, but it's a very slow one, his leg permitting, and he starts to head toward the back entrance of the theatre complex. Through the staff gates and doors, John makes sure that no staff accidentally see their approach. Any that come along, he waves away before you come into view. He has done this little route before. And you come across a staff entrance which simply is plastered with warning signs saying high voltage, danger, staff only. He opens the door and there's a set of stone steps going down. You head down there, deep into the sort of clammy darkness, with the bare sort of lights flickering into what looks like a perfectly ordinary storeroom, like store cellar, with a giant sort of refrigerated vault door, like that of a meat locker. John goes to it, moves a couple of boxes out the way, and does a strange hand signal in front of it. Places his hand on the vault and opens it up, revealing a long corridor of stonework catacombs. You go down this corridor for a while, and he brings you to a side room. The side room itself, just a very simple door, reveals John's laboratory. This laboratory is a repurposed sort of like large alcove of the catacombs itself. The flooring and walls have been redone. The place stinks of sanitizer and has a very meticulously clean sort of feel to it. There are 3 vaults, almost like cells, to one side. A large table and many apparatus. Big refrigeration units hold vast quantities of medical blood bags, as well as various other medicine and medical equipment. There is a gurney in the center of the room with very strong straps, like that you would find in a sort of mental asylum, with a sort of petri dish loaded with various cutting devices, scalpels, saws, a hand drill, as well as various needles, all meticulously clean. He asks you to bring Mr. Killer into one of the vaulted rooms.
Laird goes where you direct him to. He follows your orders explicitly to the letter. Never says anything. It's obvious that the man's a little heavy, but he's taking it in stride.
Please place Mr. Killer on the gurney.
He places the body down. I'm assuming you can see the stake protruding from the body. As he unwraps it.
John wastes no time in harnessing Mr. Killer to the bed. He puts the various large leather belts and straps onto him. Hands and feet alone mean that some of them won't fit, but the ones across like the head and the neck and the torso will. He closes the door behind you all, and you can feel the sort of like air pressure vent of the soundproofing. He goes over to the side table and pulls out his tools, various medical equipment, and brings over a I forgot what it's called now, but basically the device they use to take blood when people donate blood and start setting up the apparatus. He looks at the killer, checks his complexion. Has he fed recently?
No, sir. He has been incapacitated.
Yes. But how much is in his system, Mr. Brehon?
I wouldn't know. He's been incapacitated for quite some time. Weeks.
Well, in that case, it'd be too dangerous to drain him at this point, in case it slips him into torpor. But if he struggles, I will need you to restake him.
I understand, sir.
We are unaware of this man's abilities. I do not wish for him to break loose within my casino.
That's kind of why I took his hands and his feet. He smiles at you. Grimly, but
Well,
not.
well, let us begin. Before I begin, Mr. Brahon, are you sure you're up for this?
Sir, I would follow you to hell and back. He said sincerely to you.
There are many duties that the clan wishes of us, but sometimes those duties come at a heavy cost, Mr. Brahon.
I'm aware.
As you wish. But if you feel yourself getting queasy, then please tell me. I do not want to ruin the upholstery.
He nods at you and smiles. Kind of an airless laugh comes out of him. Very quiet.
Well,
But you can tell that his face has a grim look.
let us meet this Mr. Killer.
Do you want Brehan to take the stake out?
Yes, please, Mr. Brahon.
Okay. Brehan reaches over. He pulls the stake out, pushing down on the body, removing it.
The man's eyes slowly open. He stares up at the ceiling. A look of confusion crosses his face. His eyes dart from left to right to take in his clinical surroundings. Tries to get up. Feels the resistance from the various straps and belts. He attempts to move his left arm, which feels free from restraint. He raises it up and has a look. Interesting. He spies the two gentlemen. This is not where I went to sleep.
Good evening, sir. You are in quite safe hands. But I'm afraid that there are some questions we need to ask you. I appreciate that you are a man who understands modicum respect and is not shouting obscenities. So, if you answer our questions truthfully and clearly, this will all be a bad dream.
This is already a bad dream. We're all just living in it.
A philosopher. Very interesting. But firstly, what is your name, sir?
My name is Francis.
Well, good evening, Francis. My name is John.
I'd shake your hand, but it seems I have misplaced mine.
Very droll.
From what I hear, or from what I was told by those punks in the alley, I can heal. I wonder if that applies to lost limbs.
It is only a temporary measure, Francis. It'll take a while, no doubt, but in our condition, such things are merely a precaution, you understand.
Sadly, I do not. You mention our condition. I assume, he flicks his eyes to the right, this gentleman here is afflicted also.
We are all kindred of a sort.
Well, aren't they many and varied?
You have no idea, Francis.
I really don't.
Well, I hear you've spent some time within this famous St. Barnabas Asylum. Would you care to elaborate?
was to elaborate on. They threw me in that hellhole. I spent, I don't even know how long there. Time's different when you don't have your freedom. Felt like a very long time, especially in that place. And then, well, then he came to get me. Although it wasn't me that he came for, it was someone else. But in the chaos and destruction, I managed to make good my escape from that place.
I see. Who came for? Well, not you, but
Hmm. From what I hear, you call him Apollo. At least that's what the Hispanic fellow told me.
Hmm.
John's face darkens. Do you know this gentleman?
Only he is beautiful, and I must see him again before, well, whatever fate awaits me. I
I
need
see.
to capture his image.
Hmm. Is this gentleman the one that made you, Francis?
No, I understand the process. The Hispanic fellow taught it to me. It was not this Apollo, it was another. I do not know his name. I was thrown to him like chum to a shark.
Could you describe the gentleman in question?
He was European, not much I know. Olive skinned. He had long curly hair past his shoulders. Spoke with a European accent, possibly Greek. He was quite short. I remember that. He had to claw his way up to reach my neck before he sunk his fangs into me.
Hmm.
But he offered no name, and I didn't think to ask for one.
How very interesting. I take it this is not the description of Dr. Morgan, Mr. Brown.
I've never seen Dr. Mullins, so I wouldn't know. He looks towards Francis.
Dr.
He
Morgan
says,
was not my sire, I believe you put it. I was this way when they threw me in that place.
Ah,
Although I wasn't this way for long before they threw me in that place. Merely a matter of nights.
I see. The plot thickens.
hmm.
So you, this was before your inevitable capture. Whereabouts did your unfortunate encounter with this curly-haired European man take place?
It was within this city. One of the suburbs. It was my old home. I'd returned to look through my notes, see if there was anything I missed. I'd been trying to track him for years, to no avail. I thought I would give it one more go. As luck would have it, I stumbled upon him. He was on to me, and he bound me, tied me up in barbed wire, took my wife in front of me, turned her into one of us, I suppose. He then left with her, and that is when the man entered. did the same to me. They held me for a few nights before dropping me off at the asylum. They had no need for me. I wasn't a factor in his plans. But I will find him again.
I see. You said you had been tracking him for some time. Why?
He wasn't in the picture. I'd seen him. I'd seen him a few times before. I'd seen his beauty. I reported on his work. I thought I had him captured. But when the images were developed, he was not present. This piqued my interest. But he went into hiding. The killings stopped. So I started them again. I thought I would lure him out. Give me one last chance to see him.
Fascinating. What is his MO, Francis?
I'm sorry, John, I didn't catch that.
Well, you say you recreated his killings. How does he kill?
Well, I've seen him kill in a most peculiar way, but normally he favours swords. It is more his calling card that makes everything stand out. The Black Rose. Very hard to track, but I managed to get a hold of some myself. I'm sure you must have heard the name. It was in all the papers.
John thinks back. He reads the papers quite diligently. Ah, yes, I do remember something along those lines. So they're actually black roses, not affectations or fakes.
Indeed.
That is interesting. So, it must have been very hard for you, Francis, to finally find the one you had been looking for so long, only not to be chosen by him.
Very much. I spoke with the man a few times before that he did come for. He told me he came from New York. He mentioned worshipping some sun god. That's what he said. He said he longed to become one of the children, one of his children, a son of the god. Honestly, I don't know what he was on about.
Think back,
It appears
Francis.
Apollo had chosen him to be his, or one of his sons, and not me. The night he came from him, that was the night the girl lost her grip on my mind. He broke the man from New York out. He looked a guard in the eye and demanded to be escorted from the premises. The guard, of course, refused, but Apollo kept trying. Eventually, the guard pulled a weapon. Apollo looked incredibly frustrated by this. Then, the very darkness within his skin bubbled to the surface, and wispy tentacles formed from the torso of his demonic form as he had become. He tore the doorway apart, killed the guard. The security fled before him in panic. I seized my opportunity and followed him through the chaos and destruction. Out the holes he carved in the fence. I'd been tracking him for a long time and I'd never seen him look so frustrated. But whatever power was in that asylum easily dwarfed his. I lost him in the darkness then, though. A darkness so deep it felt unnatural. Even the asylum spotlights couldn't penetrate it. When I stumbled out of the darkness, I found myself here, back in the city. And here I stayed until I met some of our kind, as it were, Since then, I've been sleeping, and I wake to find my hands and feet removed. We do seem a awfully friendly bunch.
Well, let us speak more of the gentleman in your cell, the man from New York in which Apollo came for.
I don't really know too much about him. To be honest, I tried to refrain from speaking to most of those incarcerated there. They were all a little bit unstable. A home for the criminally insane, after all.
Just so. Can you give a description of the man, at least?
He was European. I couldn't place him. He had dark skin, coffee-coloured skin, almost similar to that of the one you would call Apollo. Far less beautiful than Apollo. And he had a scar on his face, on his left cheek. The night Apollo came, he seemed to know he was coming. Said something about returning, heading back. Didn't say where.
Fascinating, Francis. Now, I would like you to, and he moves over towards Francis very carefully, looking him in the eyes. I would like you to recount, word for word, the conversations you had with Apollo before your turning. And John will attempt his mesmerize at this point. If you'd be so kind to write his generation in the sidebar, just to see if it's going to work. Excellent. Okay, that will be a manipulation and leadership. What's the DC?
6. Well,
6.
6. Yeah.
And with enchanting voice, it'll be a 4. Four successes.
My conversations with Apollo. Have you not been listening? I clearly haven't had many of those. The one time I did hear his voice, he told me that I had served my purpose, and that I should stop tracking him. He thanked me for my wife, and then he merely said farewell, took her, and left. Understand, John, I am no friend of this Apollo. I'm surprised if he would even know my name. But he is my life's work. At least he became my life's work from the first moment I clapped eyes on him.
Let's see. My colleague tells me that there's a high chance that you are what we call a Malkavian. Let's say a nationality of our kind. So, when you were in the asylum, did you have any, let's just say, disturbing dreams or A gut feeling, perhaps?
Francis looks over at Laird. He has the right of it. I believe that is what I'm called. Although he seems to have the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Laird's face is tired even more so now from hearing that. And he kind of nods at Francis. Briefly.
Things getting on top of you, my friend.
Lately, Francis, it's been a bit of a journey, I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
But John here, he inclines his hand, is more qualified than I to help you.
I don't believe either of you can help me. In fact, I don't believe either of you can help yourself. You say it has been tiring times. They will only get worse. That's what she says anyway.
When you say she... Sorry.
That's right. The man with the bandages on his hand, he told me that only our kind can hear her.
I call?
He said that he had heard her speak to her. She speaks to me too, but when I saw Apollo, she went to the back of my mind slightly. I wouldn't say I can shut her out entirely. Perhaps I've just focused elsewhere. There's been 4 already. 4 that I know of, and I will not go back and be a 5th.
Excuse me, Mr. Brown, will you keep Francis company for a moment? I just need to step out and grab something.
Certainly.
Rayhon, pleasure to make your acquaintance.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Francis. I'm sorry about your hands and your feet. I didn't know what kind of person you were going to be when you woke up. I'm sorry. I had to be careful.
Shoot first, ask questions later, eh?
Well, more making sure you're not the type to shoot first, if you get my meaning.
No, I have a calmer head than that. Anger only clouds your judgment.
Good, because I don't intend to hurt you. I hope you understand that from here. He says to you honestly.
Francis looks back at his stumps. Oh, your intentions have been made quite clear. Tell me, you seem to be subservient to this John fellow. Why is that?
To be honest with you, he's the prince. This is his...
I've heard of the prince. The Hispanic fellow and the man with the wild eyes, they mentioned something about rules. Traditions, I think they called them. They said he didn't pay too much attention to them, but the prince certainly did, and they said something about the fact that I should be killed because I hadn't seen him. I thought that's most strange, as I had no idea who he was, or what a prince was, other than a royalty. At that time, I thought I was the only one. That night proved quite a revelation. So tell me, Laird, you serve this prince. What are his rules? What are his traditions? What can I expect?
First, Francis, there are many traditions. There are 6, in fact. But the 6th is the right of destruction, and only the prince has that right. So when I say I'm not going to harm you any further, I want you to understand that I will not harm you any further. And if you cooperate, neither will he.
So only this prince can give the authorization to tell me, actually, something I was puzzling over. I pieced things together. I had read books in my mortal days. How exactly does one go about killing that which is already dead? Clearly the stake in the heart doesn't do it. It merely seems to send me into a paralysed fugue.
To tell you the truth, Francis, there are many ways you can die. For one, you have a bit of a skin condition now. I wouldn't recommend walking around in sunlight. He looks down and he says, the stakes, they won't kill you, but you can be killed when you're put to sleep by them. You're defenseless at that point. You have to be careful about that. And then he kind of sighs and rubs his temples a bit.
So many lessons to be learned in this new unlife of mine. Seems a shame that I probably won't get to learn them all or experience much of what this has to offer.
Francis, I understand that Apollo took everything from you. But what were you before you met Apollo?
I was an intelligent man. I still am. I was ambitious and driven. I worked for many newspapers, uncovered many stories. I even had a Pulitzer to my name. But I lost all that when this addiction took over, this driving need to see what wasn't there. Tell me, Mr. Brayhon, have you ever desired something so much that you will do whatever it takes to fulfill that desire?
I think I'm learning that I could be capable in such a regard, but
I'd advise you to try your best not to stray down that path. It doesn't lead to good things. He says
that
as he looks at his handless arms and feetless legs.
Rehan sort of gives him a smile, but you can tell that there's no mirth in it. And he nods his head and he says, Francis, I want you to know that whatever you've done, you know, it's not my place to judge you. So please just continue to be honest. I believe that's the best course. As Stanhope enters the room.
He comes in with a small briefcase, basically. Puts it on the table and he opens it, and it's filled with various syringes and bottles. He picks one up and he shakes it a little, looking at it. Excuse me, gentlemen. So, speak about anything interesting while I was gone?
Oh,
Francis was
we're just putting the world to rights.
I know that all too clearly, Francis, all too clearly, says, pulling up a syringe.
Sir, Francis was a journalist before he was turned. A Pulitzer Prize winner. In fact.
Puts the syringe down for a second. Really, Francis, a journalist. What paper did you work for?
And worked for several. Washington Post, the New York Times, various local rags as I worked my way up. Investigative journalism. That's what first put me on my path. This path of destruction, it would seem. But I'm sure we all must have tales of what it was like before we became this. From what I hear, some tales may be even grander than mine. I've lived for centuries, I hear. Tell me, John, how old are you?
Old enough, Francis, to be weary of the world, but old enough to understand that if we do not take what we need, then chaos resumes. Did you investigate our kind, Francis? Did you make any headway?
No. If by investigate our kind, suppose in a way I did. Knowing that Apollo is one of our kind. Other than that, no. I tracked one man alone. I reached dead end after dead end after dead end. But that night he came to my place, he made sure that I would never be able to pick up his trails from my notes again, for he'd taken them all. All save that very first picture I took. The one where he wasn't there.
Where is the picture now, Francis?
I could not say. Possibly still back at my old home.
Excellent. And he looks you in the eyes again and says, would you care to tell me your address and where you hid it, please?
Francis offers up the address. Street in the middle income district.
Brayon's copying it down. He's writing it down.
The picture itself, if it is still there, would be in the basement. That's where I kept all my work. Possibly on one of the cork boards. I'm sure that's where he left it. As a taunt, a reminder.
Well, Francis, I have some good news for you. You see, the wonderful thing about the mind is it never truly forgets anything. It is a wonderful computer, I believe you call it, that stores information. Some things are harder to recall. Other things come forefront in the mind. So nothing is ever truly recycled. Nothing is ever truly lost. So all those notes you wrote all those years ago, we can discover them together, Francis. Because, like you, I would like to find Apollo.
Francis looks at you. Can you... Well, if I'm piecing this together correctly, you're saying you can delve into my mind and gather my notes. Does this bring them to the forefront of my mind so that I can see them?
I will need you to help me, Francis. Not resist. But yes, it will. You will speak of them as if you wrote them yesterday.
If that is the case, John, I will assist you. It will help us find them. I have one request. If you can do this, manipulate the mind, perhaps you can bring forth that first time I saw him back to the front of my mind for me. Back where it all started.
A very simple request. And one I would happily grant you, Francis, given your cooperation. Now, we have all night. And John will enter his mind and use Dominate Level 3 to sift through his memories. Firstly, have you been dominated? Has your mind been tampered with?
It's not. What I'll do, a character, if you want, I'll type up his notes because I've got quite a lot of them and stuff like that.
No worries.
So I'll put up an actual, like, his notes in his notebook kind of thing, forward that onto you. So you've got some good details and whatnot. So yeah, he spells through it, various details of where he's tracked them to, different cities that he's been, all the times he's tried to photograph them and not managed to get a picture. Corkboards with lots of wool and pins tracking things.
They go through it all. Brehon taking notes if he wishes, John just absorbing all the information with his eidetic memory, going through all the details he can pick forth, feasting on the information, hungry for it, maybe.
Brehon's just taking notes copiously, studiously.
And the last... I believe we are done with our questions, unless you can think of anything, Mr. Brehon.
Your wife, what was her name?
I can't remember, but again, it'll give you the name.
Sure. We can confirm it later, so.
Yeah, it's gone. It's about 4 months ago I used their name last.
No, that's fine. Just in case you see an NPC later, I'd rather we know it, you know.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Brehon then, after writing down the name, nods to Francis and then to John.
Well, Mr. Chess, through the course of it, you will have found out your second name.
It's Francis Chess.
Yeah. And we're going to put you to sleep now. But I'm going to make sure that I do my half of the bargain and make sure you have a wonderful dream. And he'll bring forth the memory of Apollo to Francis. And just as he reaches that realization, seeing the eyes dilate, he will plunge the stake down. He will go back to his bag and take out a syringe. He will draw a small vial of blood from Francis and place it carefully in a case. We will let you sleep now, Mr. Chess. Mr. Brehon, join me outside.
Absolutely, sir.
We go out and he closes the door. So what now, do you think, Mr. Brehon?
Well, Francis Chess became a serial killer in his pursuit of investigating vampires, and then seems to have been made into a vampire as a result. I suppose investigating his home, learning a little bit more about his wife couldn't hurt if she's now a subordinate of Apollo's. It could be that maybe Apollo's let her run reconnaissance here this whole time under our noses.
Yes, and any notes he has taken or any photographs need to be taken to preserve the masquerade.
Of course.
It is a shame that Mr. Chess could not reveal more about the asylum and what we are dealing with.
Well, he may prove useful in the future. It might have been best to have staked him and not destroy him. We don't know. My conversation with Dr. Gustafsson, I'm going to transcribe everything and email it to you immediately. As soon as I get home, sir. It's been a bit of a busy night for me. Sorry.
You look tired, Mr. Brehon.
I am tired, man. He kind of laughs, and then he realizes he called you man, you know, like in a chummy way.
There is a small bed upstairs, he says, putting his hand on Brehon. I believe it is fine, but go home, get some sleep. We don't need to do this now.
Okay. Sir? I had to talk to the sheriff, talk to High Call, talk to Gary, to get my way to Javier to make the deal to get the body. For now, on a public level, we're offering clemency for this exchange, though what people choose to do on their own time.
Clemency for what?
For breaking into Megan Maitland's home. As I
told Mr. Maitland and Mr. Brothers, there is little I can do officially to Brehon. What you and your harpies wish to do for punishment is up to you. As long as it does not fit destruction, it is none of my business.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for receiving me like this last minute.
Don't make a habit of it. And he ushers Mr. Brehon out of the door. And he thinks, it will keep. There's no rush.
As Brian is returning to his car, he sighs so deeply, realizing that he cut the hands and the feet off of a serial killer today.
And the scene will end.